Welcome to Realfire videos. In this video, we're going to talk about the DML executions that's introduced as part of Realfire version 4.0. So it is one of the view. It should be available over here. If you don't see it, you can click on Window and click on Show DML executions, and it shows all the DML executions that you have done. So the DML execution is the DML stands for data manipulation language. So that's a construct used in the SQL domain. You have something called the structured query language, which is a SQL that you can say select star and what have you. And the DML is actually the insert, update, and the delete statements that are used to manipulate the data. Salesforce doesn't have the capability or the feature that you can say, update this particular object with this particular value, and you have to write a whole big bunch of code and the batch programs and what have you to do that. So the Realfire introduces this DML, the SQL statements, the SQL update, and the SQL delete, and they can be used as part of a data load, so that significantly reduces the amount it takes, the effort it takes to update some data within a Salesforce in place. However, it is still a little bit of cumbersome if you have a small update that you want to do, and you have to create a data load and you have to specify the name and choose the source and the destination and do all that stuff. So the DML executions makes it even more easier on top of that you can directly execute the update and the delete queries from within this query editor. So the update and the delete statements, they are not Salesforce standard. So that is the statements, that's the language that we have implemented on top of a Salesforce socle and the Salesforce other APIs, matching whatever the standard SQL stuff that you do. So with additional changes that are applicable exclusively for Salesforce. So it is not an SQL one-on-one. It is inspired or a SQL-like syntax, the built on top of Salesforce, the socle and the Salesforce data manipulation APIs. That's a SOAP API or the REST APIs, one of those two. So the documentation provides information about how to do that. So you can navigate to the docs, you can click on the Realfire documentation, and there should be an option here under data loader. If you go, there are a couple of sections where it talks about what is an update statement, the syntax of the update statement, and of course the delete statement. So we don't have a insert statement at the time. We didn't think that is more value add, but we may change and add that sometime in the future. But as of now, only the update and the SQL delete statements are the one that you can use. So here is the syntax of an update statement. So update statement starts with update keyword and the object name that you want to update, include fields, and of course you have a whole bunch of set expressions. So anything within a square bracket is an optional. So the only thing you really need to update something is update a keyword, the object name, and what update expressions that you want to specify. Of course, you can specify the scope, the where condition, the order, the limit, and the offset classes, similar to what is available in the socle. So exactly the same socle expressions or any of those socle class constructs are valid here as well. So you can go and specify, you can pick a record, for example, hey, update account, set name is equals to whatever, select where created, between this date to this date, or whatever that you have. So this is syntax, and update expression is the main, the core part of the update statement that you specify the field that you want to update. So it has to be a base field within the object that is specified here, and the update value. So update value can be a whole bunch of values. It can be a null value, any literal or other field of the same record, or it can be a parent record of that particular record, or it could be formulas. So we'll address one by one and see how to use that. So as part of this connection, we have a object called DL test that we use to test the data loader. So we can use that to update. So let's go and query that object and see what data that we have to make sure that. So these are data that we have. For example, let's say we have some email fields. If you go and see, we have some email fields, date and time fields, all the data sets that we have. So let's try to update this. So here, let's say that we want to set value to, uh, for example, uh, we want to set value to text area field. Let's say we want to nullify this field. So how do you do that? So you can say update. Okay, so this is the API name of the object that you are trying to update. Set. Okay. So because here you haven't specified the predicate, so it's going to update all the records. So let's see how many records are there in this object. So we have about 600 records. So let's go and execute and see what happens. So when you select any update statement, okay, so and you can click this to execute, and the statement will be shown here, and it may take a while to execute. So it is not an immediate execution because it will take the time to download the records and apply the executions, apply the changes, and then of course we want to update. So you don't have any control over what kind of API that statement uses. It is actually defaulted to batch. However, you can control what is the batch size that we use to update the records. So because it's a batch API, the maximum size that you can specify is at 200, and that's what it is defaulted to. But if you have an object that doesn't support updating, those big batches at a time. If you want to do smaller batches, you could go and specify, for example, the 50. So it will update the 50 records at a time into the object. So you can select this object and select the statement and click on execute. So the execution will appear here, and it will process it. It may take a while, and it will update the status, and it will show how many records have been updated. So it shows the 597 records have been, so all the records have been successfully processed. So we set the text area is equals to null. So if you go back here to the data and refresh the data, so and if you go to the text area field, you would see that the text area field has been nullified. So keep in mind that we are only viewing the 100 records because that's a preview, the limit. But we can go and increase that size. Here, if you go to the query editor and object details, the data tab records limit, let's say I want to set to 1000. So you can go and refresh this time. So it should, okay, so we have to come back here. Let's say we come back here and go to the data. So it shows all the records this time. You can fetch next batches so that you can see all the records at one go. Okay, so the text area field has been set to null. So we can go and change specify different values. Let's say you wanna just hardcode to value ABC. So you can go and do that. I can execute it. So it's created the DML execution. It's going to take a while. And if you come back here and refresh the field, uh, so it has all the values have been set to ABC. So I think it is still executing them. Okay, so if we go back to the DML statement, yeah, it is completed. All the records and 597 records have been updated. So each DML record has a status file that it generates. You can right click on that and open the status files. It shows which API, the ID, the record has been updated, and the status of that. Okay. So it's on the way. So you can also set the value to other value within the same record. So for instance, uh, we have the text field. Let's say we want to copy the text field over into the text area field. So you could specify that. You could say um, this way. So the value will be copied over from the text field into the text area. Okay, all the records have been completed. If you go and refresh, the text area field is same as the text field. Okay. So this is overall the DML executions of an update, and of course you have the formulas that you can specify. So it is the same update statement that you can specify as part of the data load with the SQL update the data load type. So if you specify, here this is the data load, the SQL that you can specify here. It's the same SQL, but you don't have to do any of that work. You can just type a statement, and with a simple click of a button, it will do all the work behind the scene and updates the data. So you can also specify the parent fields. So for example, let's say the DL test has a parent reference. You could say whatever the parent field that it might have, something name if you want to specify. So I don't think we have that particular field right now, but you could specify, for example, you can say update contact set. So this is a valid update statement. So here it's gonna pick it's gonna query all the contacts whose mailing state is equals to null, and it's going to set them to a the value same as account billing state. So if you want to understand what is a sockle that we use behind the scene to update this, or how we're going to refer, you cannot see in the DML execution mode, but you could go and create a data load. Even if you do not want to save it, you can select SQL update as a data load statement and select here and enter, and here it shows we generated sockle. Here you can see that the sockle that we will use to fetch the records. So you can make sure that so it actually fetches the records that you intend to fetch, and you can also see the impacted record count. So this will show you how many records that statement would impact the based on actual execution behind the scene. Okay, but the DML is meant to be for a short number of records. If you try to execute an object with millions of records, it doesn't error out, but it may not be the right approach to do it. In this case, it's preferable to create a data load and let it run so that you have a more credible record. So all of these executions, everything that you execute, it goes into the execution history. So if you wanna remember, what was the execution that you had, you can double click on that, and you get the executed SQL or SQL statement back that you can use. You can also specify delete statement. For example, let's say you want to delete from DL test. I want to just delete one record. So this will delete. It will execute the delete statement against that particular object, and it's going to fetch the one record in the random order and deletes that particular record. Here you can see that it fetched one record and processed one and successfully completed one record. It will also generate the status file with the ID that has been deleted, and of course the status of the deleted as true. So the records that are deleted in this manner, they are actually kept in the the recycle bin. But if you have a frivolous kind of records that you want to get rid of, you're trying to delete, but you do not want to send them into the recycle bin, you could issue the delete hard statement, the delete hard from DL test limit 1 or whatever the predicate that you have. So when you do that, so the record will not be added to the recycle bin, but it will be purged from the recycle bin at the end of the processing. So if you make any mistakes here, for example, let's say this is not an actual, it will error out and say invalid delete statement, so that you have an opportunity to correct it. Okay. So keep in mind when you have a multiple statements, and if you don't select the one for execution, all the statements will be executed at the same time. So for example, let's say you want to delete hard from here, you go and click on that without selecting one, it will create two different data loads. Okay, so because it's the same statement, it didn't, for example, let's say you had the two statements like that. So if you go and run them, it will create two different data loads and DML executions, and they run in parallel. So keep that in mind if you wanna when you are executing through this, and make sure that you select the statement that you want to run so that it runs always. Also, another thing that you might have noticed is that uh, here it headed out. It's because maybe the record is not there. So the another thing that you want to keep in mind, that is no prompt that comes up before it executed. So that's the one thing that unlike the data loader, which is meant for the large data set, it's actually for the quick execution. So be careful before you execute any DML statements in production or in a sensitive data set like maybe stage and all that. So then you can easily configure your border color, if you will, so that you understand that hey, you selected different connection. By changing the different connection, the color will change, so that you can be confident that you are executing in an environment that you want to execute. You can also make sure you can also use another feature of Realfire to avoid the accidental executions. You can make the connection as read only, and by mistake, if you try to execute, it will give an error. So it will indicate that hey, Salesforce connection has been marked as read only, and hence data cannot be changed. So if you disable, then it will continue with the DML executions. So again, if you all the DML executions in the past, they are stored here. So if you want to delete any of these executions, let's say completed once, you can select one or more and you can right click and say delete. It will delete those executions. Basically, it deletes the execution, the history of that particular execution. So it is not really changing any records at the time, because once execution status is completed or errored or failed, then it means that execution is done, but it will just clear those records from this particular view. So by mistake, if you close that view window, you can come back here and you can say show DML executions, and this should show this as well. Okay. So this is about the DML executions, and I hope you got to know how to use it. And if you have this feature is available only for the enterprise edition. So if you have an enterprise edition of Realfire, I hope you enjoyed this feature and makes it your life a lot easier to update any data in Salesforce. Thank you.